Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to the Usagi Podjimbo podcast, the podcast all about Usagi Podjimbo. And we got a good one for you guys today, so please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm reading from the Usagi Yojimbo Saga, Book 2. And I was reading the Conspiracy of 8 last time we talked on the podcast. And I was like, okay, which story do I read next, And it turns out I think I might have missed two little short stories, and it makes sense when I was reading this. So I guess I must have missed these two little short stories, and I am guessing they are a part of issue 9 from Usagi Yojimbo, volume 3. So we are going to be get into that. Well, this sort of it's a really interesting the way Stan Sakai tells the story, because the first story is called Snakes and Blossoms, and we're going to get into that. So we see Usagi, he's doing a little bit of calligraphy or writing a letter, and we hear a knock at the door, and Usagi's like, oh yes, come in, and we find out that Sanshobo is still around. This is after the Conspiracy of 8. And he's like, good morning, Usagi. I brought you some nice hot tea. And Usagi's like, oh, thank you for bringing me this tea. I'm really glad I got this tea. Usagi says, I'm never usually treated with this nice hospitality. In fact, one time, it almost cost me my life. When I was staying at a temple, and Sanshobo's like, oh, how so? It seems strange that a priest would not welcome you. And he's like, well, it was not exactly a priest. And we see this look on Sanshobo's face. He's like, huh? Like, what are you talking about? It wasn't actually a priest. Like, what's going on here? And Usagi says, as they're having this nice, lovely cup of tea, he's like, what happens when my friend Gin and I were crossing the mountain range. Gin claimed he knew a shortcut, which Gin is all about his shortcuts. Let's be honest. Like, last time we found out when Usagi took one of Gin's shortcuts, he ended up meeting a ghost girl, But Gin said he knew a shortcut that would save us 2 full days. Don't mention that we had an inch along a narrow ledge and pass some bandits, but that turned out to be the easy part. As we were nearing the summit, he found a pass that would take us somewhere, and we actually go into some editor notes. We find out that this story actually takes place after Gin's story in volume 7 of Usagi Yojimbo, the trade paperback volume 7. Which is really cool, because I actually really like Gin's story. I think it's a really fun story, and one that definitely makes you look at Gin in a different light after you read that story. But Gin and Usagi are walking through this forest, and Usagi's like, I don't like the look of these clouds, Gin, because there's some big clouds overhead. And it's like, where is this shortcut of yours? And Gin's like, oh, there, the pass over there. We should reach the temple soon. We'll spend the night over there. And he's like pointing with this sword, like, look over there, Usagi, look over there. Gin kind of motions for his sword because he sees a snake jump out at Usagi. And he's like, look out, ears. And he elbows Usagi in the face and cuts the snake in half. It's a really cool scene, and Gin has definitely been honing his sword skills. I mean, Gin's a good fighter, let's be honest, But it was a really cool scene to see him cut the snake right in half. Gin kind of picks up the snake with his sheath, and Usagi's on the ground rubbing his chin. He's like, thanks, I guess you saved my life, but Did you have to almost break my jaw to do it? And Gen's like, snakes. I hate snakes. Snakes are the worst. Who else hates snakes? Well, I hate snakes. Indiana Jones, he hates snakes too. And Gen does not like snakes. I'm sorry to all the people out there who like snakes. Snakes are just a little unpredictable and they creep me out. They give me the heebie-jeebies, just saying. Gen asks Usagi if he's going to sit there all day. Come on. We've got a long way to go as we see some snakes looking in the distance at Usagi and Gen. Later on, it's raining really hard. It's coming down. Usagi and Gen are sopping wet. And Usagi and Gen come upon the temple that they were looking for. Gen remarks, "What a dump." And Usagi's like, "At least it's a dry place out of the rain." And Usagi's kind of shocked because he's like, "Oh, excuse me." He's a nun. He's like, "We didn't mean to disturb you. We're sorry. We just need a place to stay." And the nun's like, yeah, okay. You can stay here, you're welcome to stay, as the rain, chases you away or whatever. The rain ceases, And Usagi and Gen go to what I'm guessing is a makeshift room of some kind for them to rest, lay their head, get dry. We see Gen stretching. He's and Usagi's rubbing his arm, kind of, I guess trying to get dry maybe, or maybe he's still hurting from falling on the ground when Gen knocked him over. And Usagi's like, "Don't snore too loudly. You'll disturb the nun's prayers." And Gen's like, "What snore? Never me. I don't snore." Later on, I love this little panel. It's soon. We see, oh well, and Gen's snoring. He's like, snore, snore, snore. We see somebody light. I'm guessing it's some kind of incense. It doesn't look like a candle. It's more like incense. And Gen is snoring away. Usagi is trying to catch some Z's. He continuously hears Gen snoring, and it turns out to actually wake him up. And Usagi's like, "It's about time he stops snoring." So I wonder if possibly maybe he's going to plug up his nose or something, or maybe put a pillow over Gen's head. I don't know. But Usagi seems very annoyed at Gen at this moment, for sure. And as Usagi comes to and wakes up, he sees Gen, Gen's gone. Well, I should say, I should rephrase that. Gen's still in the room. Mentally, Gen isn't all there. Gen is zombied out. He has his eyes are big, his pupils are dilated or whatever, and he sees Gen walking to this woman, and Usagi's like, Gen, he's like, "What's going on here with Gen?" And this woman's like, "Yes, come, murderer, closer, so that I may partake in my vengeance." And Gen, he, like I said, he's gone. He's gone. He's like, "Oh, I don't know what's going on, but something's calling me." And Usagi runs, and he's like, "Gen, stay away from her." And you see Usagi run and lunge at this woman, trying to attack her. He's like, "Stay back, witch." And this woman kind of jumps back, and her clothes kind of she jumps back, and her clothes kind of do this weird effect thing, and she jumps up in the air. And he's like, what are you? What's going on? The woman is perched up in a corner. She has her face covered by these robes. And Usagi's like, "Wake up, Gen, snap out of it." And we hear the woman go, hiss. And she's kind of getting ready to lunge at Usagi and Gen. And Usagi basically hits Gen in the face. And we get shades of what happened before, where Gen's kind of rubbing his face. He's like, "Oh, why are you trying to break my jaw? Now, what exactly is going on here?" Gen was in a trance from the evil nun lady. As Gen comes to and he gets his bearings, we see the woman still perched up in the corner, and she's like, "Murderers, husband killers, I'll make you pay for your crimes." And Gen's like, "An Ama?" And I guess Ama is like a snake demon or something. I'm not really for sure. And he's like, "What is she exactly talking about?" And we see this woman transform into this giant, huge snake. And Gen and Usagi are like, "Oh my god, like, I can't believe this is happening." The snake lunges at them. The snake basically takes up the entire room at this point. They look, Gen's like, "Look out!" And they dodge the snake, and they get all kind of tangled up in the snake. And I love this scene where Usagi and Gen are fighting this snake, trying to survive. Gen yells and lunges at the snake, stabbing it. I'm going to say probably the throat because it's close to the mouth. Which Gen gets kind of strangled, and Usagi goes in for the killing blow, and we get the death's head from the snake, which is a little tiny snake skull. Gen's panting. He's like, "Are you okay, Usagi? Usagi?" And Usagi he puts his sword away, looks at Gen with a really, really mean look. He's like, "Are you and your stupid shortcuts? I can't believe you and me going along with your stupid shortcuts again." And we flash forward to when Sanshobo and Usagi are having some tea, and Usagi's writing a letter and whatnot. And Sanshobo's like, "There are many strange creatures that haunt our land." And he's like, Usagi says, he's like, "Oh, finish." He's finished writing his letter. And he's like, "I would like to ask you for a favor, Sanshobo. There are many in your order that travel the Pilgrim Road. Would you be kind enough to basically deliver this letter to my sensei, Katsuichi?" He's like, "Oh, of course, I will. You speak very highly of him." He's like, "Yeah, he's taught me a lot in my samurai training and with my skills and whatnot, He's like, "Oh, it's taught me not only the art of combat, but the development of my inner spirit." And Sanshobu's like, "Oh, that is often much more difficult to teach." And he's like, your flowering plum reminds me of one such lesson when I was a child." And we flash back to another story, which involves little Usagi. And we get this story called The Courage of the Plum, which Usagi and Katsuichi are walking in the mountains, and Usagi is trying to fight a tree and some snow, maybe. Maybe he wants to build a snowman. Who knows? Katsuichi tells Usagi, "You can learn much from your surroundings, Usagi. We often imbue nature with the traits of people." And Usagi swinging his stick around, his sword. I guess it's more of like it's a practice. He has a practice sword and a stick. So he's, looks like he's swinging around a stick at this moment. He's like, "Even trees, Katsuichi-sensei?" He's like, "Yeah." And Katsuichi's like, "Of course, the ginkgo tree represents loyalty, for it will often die with the death of its master," apparently. And Usagi kind of laughs it off and whatnot. He's like, "That's because when the master dies, there is no one to water it." Ah! And Katsuichi basically hits Usagi on the head. He's like, thunk. And he's like, "Oh, as I was saying," Katsuichi says, going back to telling Usagi what he needs to know, even though Usagi does not really want to learn. He just wants to fight. And, kids being kids, he's not necessarily really getting what Katsuichi is trying to say at this moment. He's like, as I was saying, the pine is a symbol of long life, something to aspire for. Your body must be as bamboo strong yet supple, apparently. And Usagi kind of stops and looks at this one particular tree, and Katsuichi points it out. And he's like, "And your heart must have the courage of the plum." And Usagi kind of looks at him, and he's like, "The plum, courageous? Why not the mighty oak, the huge chrysanthemum tree?" I don't know why I said chrysanthemum. Maybe it's because I was thinking of that story of the chrysanthemum from Usagi the other day when I was recording. This is the Cryptomeri tree. I can't even say this word. It's a tree. It's a really big tree, okay? But Katsuichi, he says, "Size does not make one brave, Usagi. Courage comes from within." And he points, and he's like, "Look at the pulp, but it's just an old plum tree," Usagi says. And he's like, "Look, the snow still covers the earth, and the tree limbs are bare. There's no snow on the tree." He's like, "You see?" And he's like, "The plum is already in bloom," he says. And he's talking about this nice plum tree to Usagi. He's like, "No other has the courage to bloom in the cold." I mean, I guess, yeah, technically he's right, Most flowers and whatnot, like, I guess go into hibernation, kind of, in the winter. And Katsuichi says, it is always the first to bloom, buds bursting forth from seemingly dead wood, triumphing over adversity, hurtling to other trees, the approach of spring, he says. And yes, this tree has courage. And Usagi's like, I never thought it would be that way, As Katsuichi's walking away, he says, "Good." And he's like, "You're right, Sensei. I will be like a plum tree. I'll even one day challenge the Tengu goblin of the Western Peak." And we hear a bonk. And I love this, how the bonk transitions from panel to panel. It's like right in the middle of this scene. And Katsuichi says, "I said be courageous, not foolhardy, idiot." And we see Usagi basically like holding his head, and as Katsuichi walks away, which is really funny to see. And we transition back to present day. And Sanshobo says he starts to laugh, and Usagi starts to laugh as they're having their tea. He's like, he is quite a fellow, isn't he? Sanshobo says. And Usagi's like, yeah, you remind me of him in many ways. And Sanshobo says, "I will take that as a compliment. But tell me, Usagi, did you ever meet up with the Tengu?" He's like, "Yeah, I did meet up with the Tengu, but that's the story for another time. Thank you for the tea." And that's how these two stories end. Or should I say the combinations of these two stories, because these two stories were technically part of the last story. It's sort of like an epilogue, I feel like, in a sense. I really did like the continuation from the Conspiracy of Eight and Sanshobo and his camaraderie with Usagi and stuff, and them still being friends and whatnot after the Conspiracy of Eight, and seeing like them having some downtime for Usagi to just tell two of his many adventures that he has had before. And it's fun to see how it's intertwined within Usagi's history. The first one with Gin being closer towards the beginning with Gin's story and whatnot. Like seeing how the supernatural element is woven back in with the snake woman. Like, that was crazy. I wasn't expecting that whatsoever. Very much plot twist right there. And seeing like, maybe the snake people do have families, just like, I don't know, Bigfoot maybe? But I love how Stan Sakai intertwined both these stories together, very much like story time, like I said, with Usagi. And they were just two really, really fun reads. Nothing like it like to like be like, oh my god, like these stories were amazing. They were just fun, simple stories that that you like, almost like a pulpy story where you can read and digest it really fast, and move on to something else. Move on to a different story. And that's what I really did like these. A little confused though, because I didn't see either of these stories in like the for like titles for like the reading order for Usagi, and I was like, where do these stories fit in, like issue wise, like publication wise? Because I was like, I can't find where these issues fit in after the Conspiracy of 8. I was very confused. And I was like, wait, maybe it's just in the last issue that I read, because I'm trying to go issue by issue for the most part. I'm trying to, I know I did the Return to Adachi Plain at the very beginning, a couple episodes ago, but I mean, I feel like it fits there, even though technically the Return to Adachi Plain is in technically the next issue we are going to cover. But there's that, little confusing, but like I was like, it's not a huge deal breaker for enjoyment in this sense. I was just trying to, publication wise, be consistent. Well, I'm not really that consistent, but it is what it is. But yeah, I had a fun time reading these. I had a huge smile on my face. It was fun. I love when Gin and Usagi get together, and Usagi finally admits that Gin is his friend, even though he doesn't want to admit it. Genosuke is Usagi's friend, and I beg to differ. I think Genosuke is Usagi's best friend, like Gin likes to say, but Usagi still doesn't want to admit it. But at least he admitted that he is his friend, which we are in a step closer to best friend, which is fun. I love when Usagi and Gin get up to their shenanigans, because like Gin is just like a different. He's something else when it comes to like a character. Like he's very brash and whatnot, and Usagi, like they're very much like, I don't want to say two sides of the same coin, but one's a little rough around the edge and one's not. One's more proper. And when they get together, man, they have a fun time. Well, at least I have a fun time reading them. I don't know how much fun Usagi's having. Gin always seems like he's kind of having a fun time too. But yeah, I love that. I love watching them fight the huge snake was crazy. I have to say, like, I love how Stan like drew like the fear in their face was very, very well done. Like seeing like both of them were scared, like seemed like scared for their lives, even though they're both like very accomplished, capable swordsmen. But yeah, I love that, and the next one didn't really have a lot of action per se. We got a life lesson, and how Usagi, there's more to being courageous and tough than being big and strong. There's a little bit more to that. And I feel like Usagi did eventually learn that, He's a good character, I feel like. But whenever Katsuichi's in a story, especially with young Usagi, it's always fun to see how Usagi acted when he was a kid, because, we all acted differently as kids versus adults. Well, most of us. But yeah. It's a lot of fun to see, I feel like. And I love seeing Usagi kind of, paying real no attention to Katsuichi as he's trying to teach him this lesson. And Katsuichi basically gets the best of him at the end, I feel like, man. Usagi was kind of an idiot, wasn't he, when he was a kid, But yeah, these two stories were a lot of fun. I don't remember what the next issue 11 next, I believe, is what we're covering. for Volume 3 of Usagi Yojimbo, which is still the Dark Horse run. Dark Horse run is going to go on for quite some time. But I want to say sorry for missing like a week or two. Had some personal things going on. Hopefully I can get back on track with the podcast. A friend of mine recently passed away, and so I've been dealing with that and whatnot. And I've also been doing some other things in my life. But I will do my best to try to not let this slip to the back, of life and whatnot. I still enjoy doing this podcast. I might not necessarily hit every week a new episode, but I will do my best for y'all, for the people who listen to this podcast, to try to stay consistent. I know I was doing it for a while. I was very consistent for a while. But life just got in the way, and I had to mentally take a break for a week and not really do anything, like just decompress and stuff like that. Thank you for listening. Thank you to everybody in the Facebook page. Usagi Yojimbo is just so good. It's just so good, and these two stories is what I really needed. Was a good laugh, a good, nice, fun laugh, and it brought a smile to my face for sure. Stan Sakai does a very good job at telling good stories. I know I said a lot. I'm not really I don't really hate a lot of the Usagi stories. Some are hit or miss sometimes, but that's only through personal preference. Yeah, none are terrible stories, and these ones were a lot of fun. Definitely go check them out. Catch you guys on the next episode. You can reach, if you want to rate and review the show, do so on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you want to reach out and talk, you can do so on my Facebook page, Usagi Podjimbo, Usagi Yojimbo Podcast. I always love to hear from everybody who listens and whatnot and give me feedback for the show. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Stay safe. Go read some Usagi Yojimbo.